Well, hello, scrappers. Mike here. Welcome back to my channel. And welcome to part 2 of me processing this 2.5 pound bag of RAM chips that we've got here. Back in part 1, I took a sort of representative sample out of this bag and I processed them to try and figure out what the most efficient way to deal with these was. I wanted to see if there was any silver in them. I wanted to see if there was any palladium in them. I also wanted to make sure there was actually gold in them before I went all in on this stuff. And, well, we found gold. We did not find silver or palladium, though, but there seems to be a fair amount of gold in these things. So we're going to get a fair amount of gold out of them, just no bonus silver or palladium. But I can deal with that. I got these chips cheap, so, that's fine. The gold will more than pay for them, I'm sure. So, back in episode 1, I incinerated some of these in a little crucible, crushed them up, treated them with nitric acid, and checked them for silver, checked them for palladium. There was none. Swirled the beaker around, and we could see that there was gold in there. So that was a beautiful thing. A fair amount for the small number of chips I ran. So it's time to scale up. It's time to do the rest of these today. So, how am I going to do it? Well, let me move the camera, and I'll show you what my latest brilliant idea is. Well, we'll see if it's brilliant or if it's a bomb. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it this way before, but we're going to try it this way today. All right, so here's what I propose to do. I've got my new favorite toy, my propane weed burner. Oh, this thing is so much fun to use, and it works like crazy. I've got my new favorite toy, my propane weed burner, strapped to the handles of my little step ladder there. And I've got it aimed down at a cheap frying pan I picked up at the flea market for just a couple bucks. And that's sitting on top of my foundry furnace. I have found that my foundry furnace gets really, really too hot for this. It tends to melt the metal, and I don't really want to melt the metal. So what I just want to do is I just want to ash the chips. So we're going to see if this is going to work. So I'm proposing to put, I don't know, a generous portion of the chips, maybe up to half of them in this frying pan. Starting the burner, standing back out of the heat with some nice long tongs that my friend Jim sent to me the other day. Thank you, Jim, and a pair of gloves. And stirring them until the flames and the smoke died down and they're nice and oxidized white. And then, if necessary, I will do a second batch because I want to get all these chips done. And I don't know if I picked the right day for it. It's about 100 degrees and close to 100% humidity. I'm going to be a sweaty mess, but it's summer in Florida, so those conditions are not going to ease off anytime soon. And I would like to get these chips processed and get the gold out of them. So I think we will do that today, and you'll just watch me sweat like a pig. All right, so let me get set up, and we'll get started. All righty, let me put a generous amount of chips in this pan, and we'll get started. Looks like cloud's going to cover the sun for a bit, so let's make hay while the sun don't shine here. Be a little cooler. All right, let me get my gloves on, and we will start her up. This sucker gets really, really hot, so gloves are kind of mandatory. Otherwise, it'll be burnt fingers. Get them in the flame a little more directly. Well, that's working pretty good with a minimum of smoke. Excellent. Stir them around here. Make sure everything gets cooked. Ah, they're turning white already. I love it. So much quicker and easier than my previous method to doing this. turn the fire up a little bit. We'll see if that speeds things up even more. I keep this up until there's no more flame or smoke and the chips look nice and white. We're getting there. Ooh, the tongs are getting hot even through the gloves. Whoops. I'll have to pick those up. Yeah, these tongs are getting really hot. I may have to figure out a different method of stirring them, because I'm not going to be able to hold these for long, even with the gloves on. But it looks like this batch pretty much done. Now there's a little more flame. Must have stirred up a couple that hadn't cooked yet. All right, I think we're about there. This is looking, whoa, hot tongs. This is looking pretty good. Couple more down here that need a little more cooking. And I guess we're about done. So let me turn the heat off. That looks nice. That looks nice. Let me see how it looks on the camera. I may have to zoom in for you. Oh no, you can see how nice and white and oxidized those chips are. That is just about perfect. Just about perfect. Okay, let me gather up the ones that hit the floor just a bit ago, put them back in, and find something to dump these hot chips into, and I'll give you a close-up look at them too. Well, I really couldn't be much happier with that. I mean, that took all of what, maybe 5 minutes? And look how nice and white and oxidized all the chips are. There's not a lot of carbon left there. These not on the outside. We'll see how much is on the inside. Because next step is going to be crushing these up. But yeah, that looks really, really good. I'm very happy with that. That's a lot quicker and a lot easier than my previous methods of incinerating chips. I'm liking it. All right, let me get these down into this casserole dish and get another load in the skillet. So here we go with the second batch. I'll probably get through these in, I would say, 3 batches at the most. I don't want to overload this, but it seems like I can put a fair number in as long as I keep it well stirred. So look how hot that skillet is. They're starting to smoke already. So I think if I put that many in, I can do one more batch and be done. So let's fire in the hole here and get them going. There she goes. All right, so you've seen the process. I'm going to keep this up until I get through all the chips. So that's not going to take very long. Well, there's our nicely ashed chips. Couldn't ask for much better than that. They're still wicked hot, so I'm not going to touch them. I'm just going to leave them to cool off, and then we'll deal with them later. Next step is they got to go into my homemade ball mill and get crushed into a powder. So we will do that, but I'm going to let them cool off so that they don't melt the plastic shell of the ball mill. So the next step for these incinerated chips is to go into my home-built ball mill down here, which is basically just a cheap Harbor Freight vibratory tumbler, which I have filled up with ball bearings of various sizes. 1 inch, 3/4 inch, ½ inch, just, put a lot of ball bearings in there, and those ball bearings will bang around, roll over each other, and just crush the snot out of any brittle stuff I put in there. So I'm going to put some of these incinerated chips in there, and let this go for a couple hours. And these should be converted into a fine powder by then, which I will then vacuum out with a little vacuum cleaner, and then process the powder in the vacuum cleaner. So let me get this started. I'm going to put the lid on it. It's a lot quieter with the lid on, and stuff doesn't fly out. So let me get the lid in place. And the vibrations will tend to loosen this nut up unless I tighten it down good. Okay, so we'll just let this go for a couple hours. I'm going to come back and take a look. Okay, this stuff's been going for about 2 hours. Let's have a look inside. Yep. Just a whole lot of black powder in there. Now, in the past, I have set up my whole big vacuum system with my huge shop vac and my cyclone separator to clean out the dust from this when I'm doing large quantities of chips. But I've only got about 2.5 pounds of chips. Well, 2.5 pounds before incineration, a lot less now. So I'm just going to vacuum it up with my little bucket vacuum here, and we'll catch all of the stuff in there, and then we'll process it out of there. Yeah, if I had like 10, 15, 20 pounds of chips and I was going to do a lot of batches, I would probably set up the whole big vacuum system, and I'm not going to bother. So let me vacuum this out. The vacuuming actually works better with the mill running, so let me start it up again. Well, of course, there you also see the advantage of having the cyclone separator. The exhaust is not nearly as dusty. So a little bit of the fine dust is making it through the cloth filter in this thing. So, all right, but we're ready for another batch. Well, having the full setup might have helped a lot there, because I think not only have we got some fine stuff shooting past the cloth filter in the bucket back there, but it's also clogging it up to the point where the vacuum is pretty much non-existent there at the end. So I'll have to clean that filter before I vacuum out this second batch of chips. I get all this powder in there. That powder probably contains some gold bond wires. Distribute this a little better. Get the lid on and get this batch going, this last batch. So 2 more hours. Be ready to vacuum this stuff out, and we will have all the chips crushed into a fine powder. All right, so we're off for 2 more hours. All right, so both batches have been through the ball mill and are now in this vacuum cleaner. And since I'm using this bucket vacuum, well, conveniently, everything's now contained in this nice bucket. So next step is we're going to do the gravity separation on this stuff and get rid of the light ashy material and just leave the metals. Okay, so now it's time for the gravity separation. And the principle of this is that the metal in here, including the gold bond wires, is going to fall down through the water quicker than the light ashy particles and the small bits of pulverized IC dye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a fair amount of water in this bucket. I want a pretty thin slurry, not a thick slurry, so I'm going to add a lot of water here. The thin slurry will allow the metal to fall out quicker. I'm not going to fill a bucket beyond about half full since there wasn't that much material left in the bottom of it there. Should give us a nice thin slurry. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit of jet dry to it to break the surface tension of the water and help stuff not float. Sometimes fine gold will float, especially if it has any oil contamination. And these chips were partially pyrolyzed, I'm sure, so some of that plastic may have been converted into pyrolysis oils, so there could be a little oil in here. So I'm going to agitate this with my paint stirrer. Just agitate the heck out of it. Make sure everything's good and wet. There aren't any clods of dry stuff down on the bottom. Okay. So that should be pretty well agitated. So I'm going to let this sit for a minute or two and allow all the metal to fall to the bottom, which should happen pretty darn quickly. Even the really fine gold bond wire should fall to the bottom pretty quickly because they're 13 times heavier than the water. So they should fall through pretty quickly, and then we'll move on to the next step. So give this a minute. Okay, it's been a minute or two, and since I've got a nice thin slurry here, the gold should be in the bottom of this bucket. So I'm just going to gently pour off this slurry into another container, and I'm just going to let that container overflow. If any heavy stuff does come over to this container, it should fall to the bottom of it. And what's overflowing should just be dirty water. And we'll process what's in the bottom of this second container. I'm not going to pour it all off. I'm going to leave a fair amount in there, and we're going to do this again. Fill it up with water, agitate it, put a little jet dry in it, let it wait, and then pour it off again. And each time I do this, I get rid of some more of this nasty black ashy stuff over here that's worthless to us and just in the way and will clog our filters later on in the process of recovering the gold. That should be pretty good. Probably only need to jet dry for the first few agitations. After that, you probably live without it. All right, so again, we'll let that sit for a minute or two and then gently pour it off into this container. And I'm going to keep this up until the liquid starts coming out of this bucket fairly clear. And then I'll know I am free of most of this lightweight ashy stuff that we don't need. And we'll have all the heavy values down in the bottom of the bucket. Here we go. Been a little while. Pour off some more of this nasty black water. Yeah, those chips oxidize nice and white on the outside, but they're still black on the inside. I guess the oxygen isn't making it too far into them for us to have this much black carbon to deal with. Yeah, I don't know if that's showing up, but there's big wads of metal down there in the bottom of the bucket. So that's all I'm going to pour off for now. Pour off about 2/3, 3/4 of the water each time. Make sure I don't pour off the heavy stuff in the bottom, but if I do, it'll get caught in there. So we're just going to keep this up over and over again till the liquid's coming out clear. I won't make you watch the whole thing. We'll be back when we get there. So after about 6 or 7 rinses now, I kind of lost track, lost count. The water's starting to come off pretty darn clear. And the reason I wanted to not pour off too much liquid before the water was clear was because I couldn't see where solids started coming over when the water was opaque. But now I can see to stop before any solids come over. There's all our metal down in there. I think I'm going to give it one more wash because we're still bringing a lot of IC debris over. But that's all metal, including, in that mess somewhere, our gold bond wires. So let me give it one more rinse, and then we will move on to further processing of this stuff. Yeah, that's coming off really clear now. Okay, I think further washing is pretty pointless. We'll just have to deal with what's left in here in the next phase. So now it's time to deal with anything that might have come over in here. We'll just do the same thing. We'll process the stuff in this container. Wash off the light stuff. Actually, there's not too much in here, which is good. There's almost nothing. But I'm just going to wash what does remain right into here. All right. There's the stuff we're going to process. We dump off the excess water because it's got chlorine in it. And we're going to have to give this stuff a couple of rinses with some distilled water before we proceed. Because the first step, I don't want any chlorine in here because we're not ready to make Aqua Regia yet. So, yep. Okay, let me get set up for the next step. Just in case you couldn't see it very well from way over here where the camera was, that's what we've got left, that tangle of metal down there. And somewhere in there are gold bond wires that we want to recover. All right, now that we've got this stuff gravity separated, I don't know if it's showing up in there. What I want to do is I want to kind of divide it equally between two of my biggest beakers. It's not moving. Okay, it's not moving. Let me find a spatula and see if I can help it move. And I also, well, I might as well, while I'm at it, I'll just rinse this with some distilled water since it just wants to stay in there. That's fine. Try and get the chlorine out of it as much as I can anyway. Because in the next step, we're going to use some nitric acid, asterisk nitric acid, to dissolve the bulk of this metal. And I want to get the chlorine out of it because we're not ready for Aqua Regia yet. I kind of doubt we'll actually dissolve any gold because with all that base metal in there, any Aqua Regia that forms would attack it first. All right. So let me find a spatula and help this stuff into my beakers. Alrighty, let's try this again. I sort of divide it. Wow, that is a tangle of metal. Ugh, that is a tangle of metal. Try and divide it equally between two of my beakers because I'm afraid once I put the acid on it, I'm probably going to get a very vigorous reaction. And I'm afraid if it's all in one beaker, we're probably going to have a boil over. I'm thinking boil over is a possibility even in multiple beakers, but we'll see what we can do here. Okay. Get all of the little bits out of here because those little bits probably contain some gold. Okay, that's pretty darn clean. All right. So, these into the fume hood and get some acid on them. Alrighty, so here's the remains of our small scale test we did on these chips. I'll get this out of the way. After we have processed this stuff, I will add that to it so we don't lose any gold. All the gold will be accounted for. Some stuff around. Okay. So, step one. Let me get a fair amount of distilled water on these. Just cover it up good. 250 milliliters or so. Maybe closer to 500 milliliters. That's okay. Not important. Get everything down in the water so it can be processed. All right, so fume hood on. Now, in the small scale test, I used nitric acid, but since there was no silver to be found in that small scale test, I decided that I could use poor man's nitric to process this stuff. It'll be a lot less expensive because nitric acid costs a fair amount of money. So we're going to make poor man's nitric by using some concentrated sulfuric acid drain opener, which in itself will dissolve a lot of the metal in here. But we'll add some nitrate salt to it, and that will speed the process up tremendously. In fact, I'm a little worried about boilovers once I do that. So in goes some concentrated sulfuric acid. I mean, yeah, already we've got some bubbling going on in there. Look at that. The acid's going to be attacking the iron. If there's any zinc there, aluminum, the acid's going to be attacking that. Put a little bit more in there. All right. And we can add more of that later. This stuff is really cheap compared to nitric acid. I don't want to waste my precious expensive nitric acid if I don't have to. And since there's no silver in here, I don't have to worry about the silver precipitating out as silver sulfate, so we can use the sulfuric acid in here. Now, if I put some heat to this by itself, this would really eventually dissolve most of that metal in there. Probably not the copper. It looks like there is some copper in there, but it would dissolve a lot of the other stuff. But we can speed things up by adding some nitrate salt. It will react with the sulfuric acid in there and create nitric acid. And this stuff, of course, is also pretty darn cheap. So this is what I use when I make my own nitric acid and distill it off. I use this stuff. So close that, keep fumes in. And we'll start spooning in a little bit of this sodium nitrate, and I think we will see. I don't even have the heat turned on the hot plate yet, but I think we will see an interesting reaction happen. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah. That kicked it into high gear, didn't it? Yeah. And now I'm going to put a little heat to them, not too much, because I'm afraid they might boil over. But yes, look at that. I'm not sure why we're getting much better reaction on one than the other, but maybe I put more sulfuric acid in that one than I did the other one. All right, so we'll just let these cook. And when the reaction stops, I can put more sodium nitrate in there and probably revive it. If necessary, I'll put more sulfuric acid in there. And yeah, it's weird. One is reacting a lot stronger than the other. Very weird. There must be more copper or something in this one, I'm thinking. I don't know. Anyway, we'll let them cook and see what happens. Well, it's been just a couple of minutes. I I don't think they've even had a chance to heat up yet. Any heat in there is based on just putting the sulfuric acid into the liquid. Look at this one. It's going great guns. Look at the clouds that are coming out of that one. In fact, I think I'm going to reach in here and take the lid off because it looks like it is in danger of boiling over, which is what I was afraid might happen. But wow, what a reaction, huh? What a reaction. But that's good. We're dissolving all that base metal. When we're done with this process, there should be nothing left but gold bond wires and a little bit of IC chip debris in these beakers. All right, that calmed down a lot. Get back on and let it continue to cook. Like I said, they haven't even heated up yet. Look at the reactions we're getting. Yeah, this one's catching up. All right, good deal. Well, we might witness a boil over. The reaction on this one got really slow again. Like this one's slowing down. I put a little bit more of the sodium nitrate in there, and well, look what happened. So we'll see. When I put more in that one, I'm going to put it in a lot smaller portion because that's quite a vigorous reaction there. So now it's calming down. Okay, I was afraid there it was going to boil over, but it looks like it's not going to. Okay. Super vigorous reaction there. Wow. Wow. Okay, it's calming down. This one was a little slower getting off, but once it stops making orange fumes, I'll put a little bit more sodium nitrate in it, but I'll put it in smaller increments. Don't want to have another near boil over. And I'll get my distilled water bottle and I'll wash this stuff down off the sides of this beaker so it's down in the liquid cooking. Wow, look at it boil. And I even turned the heat off. And it never even had a chance to really get too hot. It's just boiling from the chemical reaction of the acids and the metals. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. It's calming down. Gonna let it cook. Well, now we got the same problem over here. And, I added some more sodium nitrate to that, but it was quite a while ago. I did it off camera, but, it was quite a while ago. And nothing happened at first, really. And then it just took off all of a sudden. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it bubbling up. Delayed reaction. Got to watch for delayed reactions, too. But wow. All right, it's calming down again. No boil over. Whew, good. I'm just going to let these cook on low heat for a while. I think I'm done adding anything to them for now. I think I'm just going to let them cook. The boil over potential is just too high. I want to make sure that the reactions are totally done before I put anything else in. Of course, I've got them in Corningware containers, so if there is a boil over, I will catch everything. Nothing will get lost, but still, boil overs are messy. Okay, I think it's time to tickle the dragon's tail a little more. The reaction in both of these has slowed a lot. Put a little bit more sodium nitrate in, small amount, being mindful of the possibility of a delayed reaction. And the reaction's picking up a little. Okay. So I will watch them closely, and if necessary, pop the lids off if it looks like they're going to boil over. Yeah, that's picked the reaction up good. And okay, I've been very careful with the heat. I'm going to turn the heat up on them and see if I can actually bring them to a rolling boil without having boil over issues. and then just let them sit there and boil for maybe a few hours. I have a feeling that this first application of acid is not going to dissolve all the metal. I mean, we had a tremendous initial reaction, but there's still a lot of metal in both these beakers. So I'm thinking, well, you heat this up, let it get to boiling, and let those acids attack the acids that's in there, attack the metal until the liquid's all saturated with metal salts, and then we'll pour off this liquid and put on some more fresh distilled water and sulfuric acid and sodium nitrate, and just keep that up basically until all of the base metals are gone. It might take several treatments, I'm thinking. All right, we got both beakers up to a good rolling boil. Doesn't look like it's in any danger of boiling over. And I'm just going to let them cook for the next couple hours, and we'll see how much of that base metal in there gets dissolved. And then we'll see how many treatments like this it takes to get rid of all of it. All right, this is a very weird development. These have been boiling for quite a while now, and you can see the volume of the liquid has gone way down. I've turned the heat off so they can cool off a little bit. I thought this was producing orange fumes until I looked closer at it. No, it's just got sort of like an orange precipitate all over the inside of it. Probably rust. So I don't know why this has it and this one doesn't. Or this one doesn't and this one does. I don't know. You would think they'd behave exactly the same, since exactly the same material went in both of them and exactly the same acid went in both of them. But, Anyway, I'm going to let these cool down a little bit because they are wicked hot, and I don't really want to handle a wicked hot acidic solution right now. So after they cool down, we'll decant off the liquid, see what's left in the bottom of these beakers, and see if they need another boil. They probably will, I'm thinking. So we'll see what they look like when they're cool. These two beakers have had plenty of time to cool off. We had some bad weather come through, some heavy thunderstorms, heavy rain. So I've spent the last few hours in the house, late in the afternoon. Let's see. Man, that is so weird, the difference in these two beakers. Wow. I wonder, I don't know. I don't know what to think. But I'm going to pour off this liquid and we'll see what's left in the bottom of the beakers. I mean, there's iron in both of them in the form of steel, so I don't know why we didn't get rust in both of them. There's still a fair amount of metal there, so that's going to need another treatment. Now, how I'm going to get this beaker clean. And we've got pretty much the same issue here. There's still a lot of metal in this one. But for some reason, a lot of it has been converted into rust. I mean, I know nitric acid will oxidize iron to rust. There does seem to be less metal in this beaker than this one. So, in fact, the volume of metal here has been reduced enough that I'm thinking I can probably combine them into one beaker. For the rest of the processing. All right. There we go. Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to clean that beaker. All right, now that I've got it all in one beaker, let me get it back in the fume hood and get some more acid on it. It's going to take at least one more treatment. I'm thinking maybe two or more to get rid of the rest of the metal in there and leave us with just gold and some non-metallic debris. So let's get started. All right, same as last time. Let me put a little bit more water in there. Got some water in it from washing stuff over, but need a little bit more. Maybe I'll put the rest of this in. Okay, that's pretty good. Fume hood going. Sulfuric acid. alone warmed it up nicely. Okay, but I will turn the heat on low. In goes some sodium nitrate. Put the lid on. Well, let me stir it first, then I'll put the lid on. And we'll get this cooking again. Heat it up, get a good boil going on it again, and see if we can get a lot more of that metal dissolved. Well, this is warmed up some, and we are cooking with gas. Well, nitrogen dioxide gas anyway. So I'm taking that as a good sign. So far, no real indication it wants to boil over. So, excellent. I'm just going to let it cook and see if I can warm up and get it boiling again. And meanwhile, while that's cooking, I have put this dirty beaker back in the fume hood, put a little bit of hydrochloric acid in it, and I'm going to boil the hydrochloric acid. See if that helps clean up the inside of the beaker a little bit. That's worked for me before, so we'll see. Maybe, maybe not, but it's a quick and easy thing to try. Well, it's only been a few minutes, but look at the difference. I think this is going to clean up that beaker something wonderful. Once that hydrochloric acid comes up to a boil, I'll turn the heat up a little bit more. And yeah, it's cleaning it up nice. Excellent. Saves me the trouble of scrubbing. Okay. So this is coming up to temperature. Looks like it's getting close to boiling. So everything's going good so far. No catastrophes. No near boilovers. At least not yet. Okay. Gonna let everything cook. Okay, sweet. That looks just pristine. Alright, I'm gonna turn the heat off on it. Let that cool down. This has stopped producing orange fumes, but there is still some fizzing and bubbling going on, and it's just below boiling. I'm trying to raise it up to where it's going to boil here. And we'll get a nice rolling boil on it, and we'll let it go again for a while. Rest of the day, maybe. And I'll let it shut it down and see what it looks like tomorrow. So, be back tomorrow and see what we got left in the bottom of that beaker. Alright, it's the next morning. I boiled this for a few hours yesterday and then shut it off before going to bed last night. And so, yeah, another messy beaker. But hey, we know how to clean beakers now. So let me get this out of here and we'll dump this liquid off and see what's left in the bottom of the beaker. And I'll get finished cleaning up this beaker. And this will, I assume this will need another acid treatment. We shall see. So let's get this waste liquid out of here and see what remains in the bottom of this beaker. Hopefully a whole lot less metal. Yeah, I can already tell there's a whole lot less solid material in the bottom of this beaker. Look at that. Yeah, whole lot less solid material. I do still see what looks like maybe some steel in there. So it may need one more treatment, and maybe some copper there too. Yeah, that looks like copper, some of it. So I'm thinking it may need one more treatment at least. But boy, we have gotten rid of, I would say, 90 to 95% of the metal in there. But it looks like, yeah, there's still a whole lot of copper in there that we need to get rid of. And yeah, I would expect the copper to be the last to go because it's a lot less reactive than the steel is. So, all right. We get this back in the fume hood and we will hit it with another acid treatment. That might be the last. And of course, we don't need to put near as much acid in anymore because, well, there's not near as much metal anymore. All right, so hopefully this will be the last acid treatment. As before, some distilled water to start with. And again, as per usual, some sulfuric acid. Get the lid off. And some sodium nitrate. And we'll put the heat to it. See if we can get this last little bit of metal dissolved. And then go after the gold. All right. Well, let's let that cook. Let me get the fume hood on because it's going to start producing fumes soon. Oh, almost immediately. I've been over here trying to clean this beaker. Maybe 2-3 minutes I've been at it. Look at the orange fumes we got over here. So, yeah, got a reaction already. It hasn't even really had a chance to warm up. So I'm hoping this will be the last acid boil. But I'm going to do the same thing I've done before. I'm going to bring this up to a boil, let it boil for a while, and then let it cool off. We'll decant off the liquid and see what we got left. Maybe it'll be time for Aqua Regia. Come out in the muted sunlight here. It's trying to rain. Maybe you can see that line of gold in there. That's our gold bond wires we want. I hope that's focused, and I can't really see the viewfinder out here. But there's our gold bond wires. So I'm going to transfer this little bit of material that's left, and there's really not much. I'm going to transfer this to a smaller beaker, and we'll get some Aqua Regia on it. So it's time to go to Aqua Regia and extract the gold from this stuff. I've transferred the contents of that big dirty beaker, which is over here now, into this smaller one, clean one. And I'm going to transfer the contents of my small scale test over here too, because there's gold in this stuff too. And this has already been through acid treatments as well. So we'll get that in there. Now, time for some hydrochloric acid. By the way, I put some hydrochloric acid in this beaker, and I haven't turned the heat on yet because, well, I've got the door open. I don't want a face full of hydrochloric acid. But we're going to boil that just like we did the other beaker and clean it up. And in the meantime, goodly amount of hydrochloric acid in there, because there was some water in there, so that's going to dilute it, so I'll put a splash more in. So up till now I've been using poor man's nitric, but now we're pulling the real stuff out. Here we go. Put a few milliliters of this in there. There might be a little bit of residual nitric acid in there even after my rinses. So that's about 2 milliliters. I'm going to go about 4 milliliters and see how that does. The reaction stops. I'll put a little bit more in and see if we get any more activity. Put a little heat to it. Put some heat to this one. Put spurs to him. All right. And we're off and running. And we'll see what happens. Well, we're getting some orange fumes in there. I don't know if that's showing up on the video or not, but I can see it with my eye. So that's a good sign. Orange fumes, some good bubbling going on. I'm just going to let that go until the reaction stops. We'll put a little bit more nitric acid in, see if we get any more reaction. If not, well, then it'll probably be time to denox it, filter it, and drop the gold, and we'll see how much gold we get out of those 2.5 pounds of chips. All right, but for now it's cooking good, so I'm going to let it go. All right, before we denox this, let's check it. Let's do a stannous chloride test. People say I don't do enough stannous chloride tests. I'm pretty sure there's gold in solution there, but we'll check just to be sure. Alright, let me get my white spoon here. We'll just get a few small drops out of here on the end of a... Alright, the end of a stir bar. Alright, so let's check this and see what we got. There we go. Boom! Yeah, we got some gold in solution, and that's a really good indication. That's strong. It's not purple. It's immediate black. So we got a fair amount of gold in solution. All right, let me get that stuff denoxed. So as per usual, I have my saturated solution of sulfamic acid here to denox this stuff. Now I've got to be a little careful. My last addition of nitric acid really didn't create any kind of reaction, so we're probably pretty overnoxed. This could be violent. So I got to put this stuff in slowly and carefully so we don't get a boil over. All right, well, maybe not as violently overnoxed as I thought. Okay. This is proceeding with just a little fizzing, not too bad. All right. Good deal. All right. I love it when there's no drama. Okay. We get some ice to put in there. We'll cool that down and dilute it with some ice, and then we'll be ready to filter. Okay, so in goes some ice. This liquid off of this hot plate onto one that's cold over here, so that this can actually cool down a little better. Okay, we'll let this cool and dilute, and then we'll filter and drop the gold. Well, things are just going along swimmingly. My beaker's cleaning in, which is nice. The ice is melted, and we're all set to filter this. I'm going to give it a quick vacuum filtration here. Try and get the liquid through before I get too many of the solids in the bottom through, which will no doubt slow the process way down. It's less green than I thought it was going to be. Much less green than I thought it was going to be. So I'm pretty happy about that, too. Everything's just coming up roses. Hopefully there's a lot of gold in here. So filtering this is going to take a little while. I'll be back when it's done. Got some Stump Out by Bonide. Contains sodium metabisulfite. So this will drop the gold out of solution. It's gone lumpy on me. Humid Florida. Humid Florida. And that's one more spoonful ought to be plenty. Yeah, I would say we are getting a color change. I would say we got gold precipitating out of solution. Get fume hood on. I'll have to breathe that sulfur dioxide. Okay, it's about supper time. So I'm going to go in the house, have some supper. Probably let this sit overnight. And we'll see what we got in the bottom of the beaker in the morning. Well, it's the next day, and check this out. Look at that. Just a very faint green color to the liquid. Otherwise, it's perfectly clear. Looks like a fair amount of gold on the bottom. Very nice, very nice. Now, this video is getting really long, and I've got a lot of gold recovery videos out there already, so I'm going to go through the next steps on this pretty quickly. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'll just show you little bits of it. I'm going to decant off this liquid into my temporary stock pot. I'm going to transfer the gold on the bottom of this beaker into a smaller beaker, and I'll give it some boils. First off in muriatic acid, or hydrochloric acid, whichever you want to call it, and then some distilled water boils. Then I'll dry the gold out, and we'll weigh it, and we'll see how much gold we've got. So I'm going to go through this quick so this video doesn't get too much longer. Let's get started. All right, I have transferred the gold into this smaller beaker. I got some hydrochloric acid on it. We're going to give it a hydrochloric acid boil, and then we'll give it several distilled water boils, and then dry it out and weigh it. The distilled water boils have begun. I'll give it about 3 of these and then dry it out so we can weigh it. Drying out the rinsed gold. All right, it's time to see just how much gold we got out of those 2.5 pounds of chips. I mean, based on my experience, I know how much I expect to get. We'll see how much I actually do get. Get all the little stuck on bits here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, there's some still stuck in here. But that is actually about what I was expecting, maybe even a hair more. With these kind of chips, I operate on the theory that I'm going to get about 0.5 gram-ish out of every pound. So with 2.5 pounds of chips, I was figuring on about 1.5 grams, and we're a little over that. So I'm pretty happy. We're a little over. It is kind of odd that there was no appreciable amount of silver in these chips. Usually I'm also looking forward to getting some silver out of them, but different manufacturers do things different ways. And I guess this batch of chips just didn't have any silver in them, but a little bit more gold. So hey, I'll take it. On the whole, I think everything turned out pretty good. It all went pretty smoothly. I've got a new way of incinerating chips I'm pretty happy with. So yeah, I know the end of a lot of gold recovery videos, they melt it down and make a nice little pretty button or bead. I'm not going to do that. I let this stuff accumulate in my little reservoir here of gold until I have, used to be I would wait until I had 1/2 ounce and then I'd process it. Now I wait until I've got about a whole ounce and then I process it. I will refine this gold 2 more times until it's as pure as I can get it. I'll use different precipitating agents each time. And then I will melt it down and make some little ingots. But until then, we're just going to continue to accumulate. So that's the way I like to do things. Anyway, I'm pretty happy on the whole with the way this went. If you're happy with this video too, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to see my future videos. There'll be lots more videos coming out on gold recovery, silver recovery, all kinds of metal stuff, and videos on other subjects too. So subscribe to see those videos, and check out my second channel, ElectroGeek64. There's good stuff going on there if you're all interested in electronics or retro computing. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching this one. Bye.